Welcome to Fronts and Factions, a section I was going to do on another channel, but YouTube thinks that channel is a no good channel full of bad things and wants to protect you from it. So anything that I have put there so far is lost to the mists of time and gone forever. So in the meantime, at least, I figured that I will use my good, likable, good good channel, personal YouTube channel that is good, that I've had for a long time. YouTube, please don't mess with my channel, and use that one. I've written all of these scripts after all and bought decidingly mediocre equipment, so I might as well use it, right? So, title of this video, yes, Fronts and Factions, series going over those two topics. Maybe a bit on the nose, that's okay. But it's something I need to happen. This first video is why Fronts and Factions. So, I've played Dungeons and Dragons for a long capital L time. My father and uncles were some original players back in the day, and I was already oogling his OG Monster Manual and figuring out this extremely convoluted math and THAC0 and stuff. I was precocious. But after decades of falling in and out of games, it was only during COVID I got really into it. And that started with my housemate inviting me to a virtual online game of Lost Mines of Phandelver. A bunch of players had dropped out. My housemate was getting frustrated. It was going to fall apart before it even got wrapped up. And it did fall apart eventually, but only after both of us left. One of the things that I got really frustrated with early on in that experience was something I noticed of an illusion of choice. Or you'd also think of as a lack of consequences. You know, in Lost Mines of Phandelver, there's a section in the middle where you have a whole bunch of side quests. And we, like very diligent, motivated adventurers, ignored most of those side quests. As we felt like we had to deal with the main thing right away. And as we would shirk the quest givers again and again, I expected to see consequences of that snubbery, right? Like you would expect in like a timed video game, right? Oh, you failed to deal with the orcs in a timely manner, and now there's this bigger problem, right? And we would cast augury spells, do all this stuff to try to figure out what's the important thing to do? What do we got to do right away? But what I got instead is something that we kind of all expect from, well, bad video games, right? Which is a bunch of quest givers sitting around waiting for you to take their quests, right? And this is something that I have learned to kind of grow to expect and in D&D and video games based on it. This is even true of beloved Baldur's Gate 3. I heart you. This is still true. It's especially bad in the beginning, right? You've got an inn that's on fire perpetually, right? Oh, there's an inn on fire? I should probably go there right now. Oh, wait, I can wait a week and it's still on fire? Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense, so that's okay. But we end up getting is kind of fake choices, right? And lack of consequences, right? And at the time that I noticed this, right, in Lost Mines of Phandelver, I was disappointed by it, but I thought that it was kind of a DM issue, right? I played lots of games over the decades and had gotten to notice a whole milieu of DM snafus that can occur, right? And I had gotten pretty inured to it, so I was like, well, maybe that's just a thing with this particular DM. And it was only once I started DMing myself shortly after the end of this game that I realized that this is a feeling that was pretty baked in, right? I was also consuming approximately all of the popular media on D&D. Thank you, hyperfixation, right? From the lore videos, optimization videos, role play content, even the old graybeards talking about DMing that have DM'd for 20, 30 years, right? And I would hear them talk about factions and also this term from Dungeon World called fronts, right? But it was usually in passing. And in the kind of passing, like how all of my high school English teachers would talk about grammar in passing. And that's a kind of passing that says, I know this is important, but I really don't want to talk about that. I don't really want to talk about this. Can we just not talk about this, please? And that bothered me. So after the first time that I had played D&D, and even after my first profoundly bad foray into DMing at the age of 12, between that, this much later excursion in my late 30s, I had started writing. And my first novel involved two diametrically opposed factions and a third smaller group, kind of having to deal with both of them. This battle of groups and people within those groups, endlessly fascinating to me. Even in my current work based on the tarot, each suit is in a cold war against each other. It's tense, and small things can wreck the current order. But in the overwhelming majority of content, both in places like YouTube and in the modules themselves in D&D, I was seeing the barest mention. And often that was small and kind of pathetic. Looking at you, Ghosts of Saltmarsh, with your 2.5 factions, barely. They weren't active. They weren't dynamic. They were often the same size as each other. There was minimal guidance on how to wield these tools. And the more that I saw this, the more that I wondered if this was largely because knowing how to run fronts and factions requires knowing people, even if those people are monsters, right? And the weird ways that they work and their complex motivations. And that might be overwhelming, not just to the creators, but the DMs trying to use this content, right? Now, as a snot-nosed child first playing, I didn't know how people worked either, right? They were illogical, strange, spending so much time and energy on things that didn't make any sense to me at all. But I was really determined to figure it out, and in the way that only a neurospicy person can, looking for the outside, and give me a lot of insight into the weird and dynamic ways that people worked. And because I was a snot-nosed child, right, the goal was predictive, not empathetic. Right? Now, don't worry. This is going to be one of those intensely personal video essays where it's like 10% the content and 90% intense personal essay into my personal life. I'm aiming for a good 70-30 split. You'll be fine. But the point of it is, and what I'm going after here, is that I spent a lot of my life figuring out these complex and multifaceted motivations of people. And then I was profoundly disappointed when I didn't see it much in my TTRPGs. So that's the goal here. As I continue this series, I'm going to dig on what even is a front. A lot of people don't know what it is. From the origination in Dungeon World to how it can be conceptualized outside of this pretty formulaic setup that they set up for it, to factions and how to build them, large and small. A little spoiler, a faction is both a multinational corporation and a small gang. And, you know, more things are factions than just what the publishers labeled as such. That's another spoiler. And how to keep both dynamic and impactful, right? And modulate those dials so that your party can be on the edge of the seats when you need them to, and be relaxed and comfortable when they need to. From there, I'll go on to some campaigns that I have run that have included factions and what I changed to make them work. And I might even go into some other modules or my own homebrew as well. It depends on whether this is something y'all even want. So let me know if this is something you want. Do the things y'all know how to do. I'm not going to show, but I would rather die. And feel free to drop questions in, and I'll make sure those get addressed as soon as I can.